Starting a marketing agency is by far the best business model in 2026. There is nothing that will give you more freedom and more money for less work. I promise you that. And there are 3 things that you need to consider before you start a marketing agency and if you are in the very early stages. So I want you to listen very carefully because I scaled my marketing agency from $0 to $8,500 in my very first month to now making $30,000 1 year later. And the first thing that you need to consider before you start a marketing agency is, are you willing to go all in? Now, flashback a few years, when I'm first starting my marketing agency, I would go to breakfast with my grandma every Tuesday. And every Tuesday she would ask me the same question: Luke, what are you gonna do if it doesn't work out? What are you gonna do when you turn 26 and you're off your parents' life insurance? And every Tuesday I would tell her, Grandma, don't worry. When I turn 26 and I'm off my parents' life insurance, I'm gonna go back to college. I can do business, I can do teaching, like don't worry about it. I'm gonna just try this until I get to 26. Once I get to 26, I'll give up, I'll give in. Now, every time I said this, I actually felt it. Like I would vividly imagine myself at 26 years old, giving up, going back to college. I would spend 2 years until I'm 28 in college, get a girlfriend, find a house, basically envisioning myself as a failure. And it wasn't until I finally had it one day. And I remember I walked into my house and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I said, no kids, no wife, no house. And I had completely given up on that 26 years old date. And I remember it feeling so liberating. And from then on, I was able to actually work on what mattered long term. Rather than trying to do things so I could make it before I turned 26, I would think further out in the future and do things that benefited me shorter term. Now, if you're not willing to go all in, if you don't want this with every bone in your body and you're not willing to be a 40-year-old man, still going at it, still posting videos online, still making content at 40 years old, and you can't imagine that. Like imagine that right now. Imagine you're 40 years old and you're still doing the same thing. If you're not okay with that, then you have a serious mental barrier in between you and your success, and that's a timeline. So before you start a marketing agency, I think you need to let go of your plan B, as scary as it might be. I know it's scary, but you need to let go of your plan B. It's holding you back. There's one plan, and that's plan A. So the second thing is that don't go into this expecting it to be hands off. It is not hands off, guys, and it never will be. You probably scroll on Instagram and you see those videos that are like, hey, we can get your business on autopilot so you don't have to do anything. Or hey, this is Jimmy and he made $200,000 a month doing absolutely nothing. And that's just not the truth. There's always something that you have to be doing. Now, I will say there's not as much to do as maybe if you're like working a brick and mortar. If you own a nail shop or if you own a remodeling business or whatever. But I'll tell you this, when my business partner, before he met me, he was running a $50,000 a month pressure washing business. And he had his feet up, he was in England, it was running on autopilot, and all of a sudden, he starts getting notifications on his phone. $2,000 chargeback Stripe. Another one, $2,000 chargeback Stripe. Well, he was on vacation overseas. His CSM had taken all of his clients and told them to charge back his card, and he had to start from scratch. So you always have to, one, keep an eye on your business, just because if you don't keep an eye on your business, there is somebody that can take it from you. And two, it's just the due diligence of being there for your clients. There's two kinds of people. There's one owner that shows their face on camera, they show their face everywhere, but when the client onboards and when they join and they're expecting to meet the owner, he's never there. And they lose client satisfaction and it increases churn. Whereas you have another owner who, I'm not saying you have to be working at your desk every day, but you at least have to be there to check in. You have to at least keep an eye on things, because the bottom line is no one will ever care about your business as much as you. So you need to keep that in mind, that don't expect to go into this, start making $10,000 a month, and then just be fucking off in Cabo. It's just not the reality. It's not the truth. You're always going to have stuff to do. You're always going to have to macro manage things. Even so, if you want to run a good business and you want to keep growing, you need to be there for your clients, to build rapport, to reduce churn, things like that. And the third thing is communication is literally everything. When I first started filmography, I was a second shooter shooting at this like outdoor mall with one of my buddies and my business partner at the time. And I remember I was talking to one of the girls that hired us. She worked for the company that hired us. And I was just being goofy and I was kind of acting like an idiot, and I was slouched over and I was kind of just like recording stuff and talking, and like it didn't look like I really cared, and I wasn't dressed like I really cared. I was probably wearing sweatpants, I was probably wearing like a graphic t-shirt, and my buddy pulled me over aside and he's like, dude, like I need you to snap out of it and lock in. He's like, you're kind of acting and talking like a retard right now. And I remember getting really defensive at first. And then I just remember thinking about it deeper, and I was like, I never really thought about that right now, or thought about it up until that point, how important it was to look presentable and to communicate properly and professionally. Because up until that point, I had been making beats. I was signed with a record label, being in and out of the studio, where there's fucking like no rules to and no professionalism there. Honestly, it's the opposite of professionalism. The more you mumble, the more you look stupid, the more popular you'll be. So I was so used to that when I went out into the corporate world and I was like talking to people the same way and I was just like an idiot, I didn't realize how much that affected it. And so from then on, I kind of started to take my communication more seriously, stop talking like a retard, and stop dressing like a retard and dress more professionally. And what I noticed was people would start to take me more seriously. And you might be a younger kid, maybe you're 20, 19, 18, and you're so used to like not caring, like you're just out of those teenage years. And I think that's a prime point before you even start a marketing agency. If you're younger, first things first, work on your communication skills. Because those are the most important. It's more important than getting leads. It's more important than making SOPs. Like just being able to communicate properly, people will respect you more. People will want to work with you more. And I will give you a book suggestion, actually, a few book suggestions that helped me with my communication. Because like I said, I was really, really bad before. And the first one is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Very popular book. I've probably read that book 2 or 3 times. And it's one I keep finding myself having to go back to because I keep forgetting like all of the lessons in there. And every time I read it, I get like this boost of motivation, and it's just a refreshment reminder to do it. So that's one I would recommend reading multiple times, at least once a year. And then the second one is this book, Storyworthy, that I'm actually working on right now. I picked it up not too long ago, and it's a good video. It's a good book. And it really harps on the point of how important storytelling is in your day-to-day life. And what really motivated me to look into storytelling books was actually reading the Bible. Because when you read the Bible, you realize Jesus only talks in parables. He only tells stories, and they're so moving. And so after reading the Bible is when I really dissected it, and I was like, wow, this is like the holy book, the #1 bestseller. It's motivated so many people, and the way it was able to do that was entirely through parables. Very incredible, but also shows you like how important it is. If you really want to move someone, if you really want to get through to them, you have to tell stories. So those are 2 books I would definitely recommend. To sum it up, before you start a marketing agency, because like I said before, it does not get better than a marketing agency. I have a remodeling client called me the other day. He's late on payments, and he starts to justify it by saying, "Oh, well, you guys don't, you just launch the ads and then you don't touch them." And it's like, I gotta pay this guy to do all this stuff. And like, as mad as I was that he didn't pay, I also was like, he has actually a good point. His business is 1,000,000 times harder than this. Every single day he has jobs, he has projects, he has all these employees, things get messed up in people's houses. And here I am barely doing anything today. Like today I just read my book and like I'm raking in money hand over fist. The most work I have to do on a single client is, when we shoot videos, scripting them and stuff like that. But that's all fun stuff. And then after that, it's kind of just maintaining stuff on the computer. And then I get like $3,500 a month. So it really is the best business model by far. And so looking back at all these things, like, would you go all in for that? Would you go all in for this life? Do you care if it's hands-off, really? Do you need to have a hands-off business? Because it's not as much work as other things. And then, are you willing to work on your communication? So those 3 things I think are very important. And definitely subscribe and keep watching. I don't really know how to end videos. I'm still working on my outro, but definitely subscribe and definitely like, because I'm going to keep dropping more gems. Keep you guys updated. Oh, also I'm working on a $16,000 client right now, multi-locational client. So I want to make a video about that, but I'm still in the middle of closing them. So stay tuned for that one.